So what are you saying, people? It's another episode of The Social Worker and the Mentor. Do you know what, yeah, guys? One thing I'm going to say, you are liking and subscribing. Yeah, you are actually doing that. You're liking and subscribing and you're sharing. Thank you so much for the support you're giving to myself and to Rob. And guys, again, the Patreon. So please, please, please sign up to our Patreon. We're doing a lot of CPD. There's exclusive content as well. There's content with myself and the chief social worker at the Department for Education. There's content of Rob. Also, just to say, outside of this, we're doing a lot of workshops. Rob's doing workshops. I'm doing workshops. For universities. If you want me and Rob to come in, email us, thesocialworkerandmentor@gmail.com. Yeah, but thank you for your support. And Rob, bruv, I hope you're enjoying Morocco. Yeah, you ain't sent me no pictures yet, innit? But I hope you enjoy Morocco. So people, listen, yeah. See the guests opposite me. It's a big, 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 big guest, you know. Big guest. And I know she's probably playing it down at the moment. Please playing it down. But this is a big, big guest. But please do introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Rachel Cole and I am the CEO of an organisation called Black Foster Carers Alliance.
Let's clap. Let's clap for Rachel. Clap for Rachel. Right. Now, before we go in, Rachel, for your role, I think you're a social worker, actually. Qualified social worker. So how long have you been qualified as a social worker for?
So I qualified in 2019, I believe. So qualified as a social worker. Before I even got into social work, I had many different careers beforehand. So I originally went to university, studied criminology and sociology, and then I worked in probation for about 2-3 years. And then I pivoted. I went into social enterprise. I was like a development manager for an organisation, giving people grants, pivoted again, went into education, managed a sixth form. But I realised that all these jobs were all supporting people. So I thought, you know what, if I want to advance, I want to get into social work. But before I did that, I went into fostering.
Okay.
So I became a foster carer, which we'll probably get into that later on. Became a foster carer. And during my time as a foster carer, I thought there was things that I didn't particularly like. And I thought, I want to be more involved. I want to get involved more. So then I trained and I became a social worker. It didn't last very long. I'm going to be very honest. I was really struggling with it. And I remember just before I went into social work, when I was speaking to people, they were like, Rachel, don't do it. Don't get into it. This is not for you. And I was like,
already putting you off and saying no.
I was like, what are you talking about? This is what I want to do. I think this will help me and help people. And then when I got into it and I saw the politics and the decision making, it didn't align with myself. And I just felt, if I want to bring about change, I don't think this is for me. When you go home sometime and you just don't feel comfortable about what's happened in the day.
Yeah.
So it led me to think, okay, let me think outside of the box. While I was on maternity leave, I was headhunted to be part of an organisation. I went and worked for that organisation as an operation manager, then as an operations director. And then during my time there working with about 20,000 foster carers throughout the UK and working on DFE contracts, I said, you know what, with all these things that we're working on, meeting all these people, there's something that's missing in society. We're not giving the right attention or support and encouragement to Black foster carers. The demographic's very small, but when we look at the amount of Black children and Black and minority children in care, there's many. It's overrepresented. I'm not going to tell you the statistics because and a lot of people know, but it's overrepresented within the statistics. And I thought, no one's doing about this. Year in, year out, the government are producing reports. They're saying that statistics are really high. The DFE are speaking to different people and say the statistics are high. And when I'm meeting other organisations, they've been saying this is not a new thing. This is a historic problem.
And it continues to be ongoing.
And nobody's sort of stepping up. And I thought, you know what, let me try and be part of this change, because I feel like sometimes we look for community, the government, to change things. And I feel like if we need to change things, we need to look within our own communities and bring about change. So that sort of catapulted me into setting up Black Foster Carers Alliance. So the organisation itself, we do more. We don't just focus on Black carers, but that is some of the core of the work that we do. So we support with the retention and the recruitment of Black foster carers. So what that means is going into the community, speaking to the Black community and the minority communities and educating them about fostering. trying to encourage them. We're running a pilot project whereby we're actually sending out black social workers to recruit black foster carers and are doing an assessment process with them and recruiting them for organisations. We are also we develop and deliver training for local authorities, for independent IFAs, where we support foster carers that have black and minority children and support them to how to be more culturally sensitive with the care that they're actually providing, because we have to be realistic. The statistics aren't going to change overnight.
Yeah.
There's systematic and systemic reasons why black people don't necessarily step forward and be what I would say is official foster carers.
I was just about to actually answer that question, yeah.
I always say, you know, and we can see it within our community, there's a lot of fostering going on, but it's unofficial. You know, you see your family member or a friend where there's having a bit of trouble in their family dynamics, and they say, come and live with me for a little bit, I'll support out. That happens so much within our community.
More than we know, yeah.
And there's so many people doing that now without the support of the local authority or without support of anybody. But when we look at the statistics, it's looking like it doesn't happen, but it does. But when we formalise it, and then we look at the assessment process and the whole system of becoming part of a system, there is a struggle. It is quite difficult, and we want to try and encourage more people to get into it, but we want to ensure that the organisations that are recruiting black and minority carers understand the culture, and they try and work with the families to their standards rather than sort of being oppressive, because we're finding that there's a lot of oppression within the system. You probably know about that.
Yeah, and I was going to say to you, Rachel, in terms of what you mentioned about black foster carers coming forward, you're absolutely right, because I've managed a children looked after team as well, and you find that from our community, we don't tend to come forward, or if we do, it's a small minority. And with the creation of the Black Foster Carers Alliance, what is it you're hearing from black foster carers or our community as to, I mean, I know the answer, but I know why I'm asking you for the purpose of this episode. What is it you're hearing from the community as to why we're not coming forward?
I think there's a fear, because I'll be quite honest, fostering is very intrusive. Just even when you look at the assessment process, you know, for three months, you're going through a system whereby someone's reviewing your finances, your family dynamics, your family tree, the way you relate to others, test your resilience, coming in your home, they do unannounced visits. And for many people, that may be quite difficult. And then when you look at just the dynamics and, you know, how some of our black community is, we are quite private. Our work life and our personal life is very different.
Yeah.
And when we are at home, we are all the authentic self.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes when you think about being in this foster environment where you've got a social worker coming to your home then kind of can become the office, and you may not be able to feel yourself.
Becomes very corporate, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It can come really corporate. So I think that's the reason. I think sometimes when I'm speaking to black foster carers and they are actually starting the process, a lot of them are dropping out, and they're dropping out because of the way they're made to feel. I've been supporting carers previously that they didn't, as soon as they came into one foster carer or potential foster carer's home, they assumed because of the house, no reason why, they said, oh, you know, you can't smoke weed. That was the first thing they said when they got in the house. This person does not smoke. This person hardly even drinks alcohol.
The assumption and
there was the
that
assumption.
Stereotype. Yeah.
And this person is a professional. You know, they have a registration. That's their career. So they were quite insulted by that. And they said, why would you think that? You know, no one even smokes in this house. So there were some stereotypes there. Or there was things, I'll give you an example. So a foster carer, she's now a foster carer now, but you know, when they went through the process, they were like, oh, we don't like the way your house is set up. We think you've got too many things. You need to clear out your house. And I personally think, I don't know what many other people think, sometimes in the black community, we have a thing about hoarding and holding on to
we
things.
Love everything, I'm telling you.
And I believe it goes back to when a lot of us came to this country, may not have had a lot. So we had to look after everything. And I think it's kind of been passed down through generations whereby items become more than they actually are. There's you know, people don't want to let go things or say, oh, you know, I'll use this or I'll give it to such and such.
My grandma and grandpa rest in peace here, but just to jump back on what you're saying, my grandma, yeah, you know, I'm laughing, sorry, because my grandma, yeah, she had this thing, bless her soul, with cloths. So I remember going to her house all the time, yeah, and all her kente cloths. Rachel, this woman would not want to let it go. And she kept a hold of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, she wouldn't sell it. She just had it there for her. Do you know what I mean? But you're right. Within our community, we hold on to things, which is true. Yeah, we do.
So they thought that was quite a lot. Like, it's not a health and safety issue.
Yeah.
Why do I need to clear out my home? There was another instance where another foster carer, potential foster carer, was, they examined her finances and they couldn't understand why she was paying some bills for her mother. And they were like, aren't you going to get that money back? And she's like, no, my mum's elderly. We as a family, specific siblings, we pay particular bills, and they just kept on questioning it. They were just drilling on it, and it just made her feel very uncomfortable.
So even the questioning of culture and cultural norms as well, and I'm going to assume these are white assessors coming in, and questioning some of the cultural stuff that we do.
Yep.
Is making black foster carers like
feel uncomfortable.
It's
making them feel uncomfortable, and then they're thinking, "Oh, should I do this? Should I stay?" So some of these things, and the foster carers that are there, what I found was really interesting. So last year, I did an article for the Metro, and I'm working with quite a few foster carers now. And as part of this sort of interview was to bring some foster carers along so they can share their story. So I was telling everyone about it, and they were like, okay, that's really good, really interested. And then the more they thought about it, they was like, I don't want to be put on Front Street. I don't want to share my story. I'm worried about what others may think. I'm worried about what if some children come out of nowhere and may make some allegations because of past trauma. They were scared. And I didn't realize that something I thought was going to be something so positive worried them so much. And some of them, they've been working in fostering for 30 years, and they didn't want to share their story because they were scared, just for what other people may think. And that was quite worrying.
So, obviously, Rachel, being the CEO of the Black Foster Carers Alliance and what you're doing, I've read a lot of articles that you've done, and also the editions, and you're very, very big on representation within fostering. How important is that within our line of work about representation within fostering?
I think it's really important because the world that we live in is very complex, and I believe it's even getting worse now if we think about it. And I think culture, heritage, and identity and belonging are really important, regardless of what you look like. It is. We all have a level of culture. When we deliver training, we always say, just because you may not be Black or Asian, that doesn't mean you don't have a culture. Culture is language, it's traditions. It's what kind of grounds us in our foundation. So I believe children of colour and children from global majorities, they need to have an understanding of their heritage. They need to be able to explore that. And the families that are working with them or caring for them need to be able to have the skill set to do so. And I find that, especially in fostering, it's very reactive. It's not as proactive as it should be. So there are families that are being given children that have particular learning needs or particular races or what have you, and they are not prepared. They are then asked to go out there, seek information to support that. And my thing is that when you go for a job interview, they expect you to prepare. So why is it that within fostering, they don't get the space enough to prepare? Because not all placements are planned. So then these families are looking for information about, how do I support this child? What do I need to do? And within the Black community, we are a diverse community in terms of heritage, in terms of language, in terms of religion. Even when we look at our health needs, there's a lot of initiatives around skin and hair, but we are more than skin and hair. When we look at our health needs, we have specific health needs that other communities don't have, sickle cell, vitamin D deficiency, lupus, all these things. And some of these illnesses, they do not exhibit as what we may think they exhibit. Sometimes it's lethargicness, it's different things like that. And if we are not equipping foster carers to understand health needs as well as skin and hair, then how are we doing a disjustice to the children that they are caring for? So I'm really passionate about that. our organisation is not saying only black families or minority families should look after minority children. What we are saying is let's try and encourage more, but also let's make sure that the families that are there willing to support black and minority carers, they have the right skills to do so. And let's not let them be rummaging around places looking for this support. Let's provide them. Let's be proactive and let's do it in an interactive way where we can talk about race, identity and belonging, so people don't feel uncomfortable, because let's be honest, everybody feels uncomfortable to talk about race.
And I was just going to jump on the back of that, because we all have seen the recent child practice review, safeguarding review, that Janine wrote, and I also read it as well, and I spoke about it on TikTok in terms of what we're seeing within the system in terms of children who are black and global majorities, and their experiences, and also decisions that are being made, and actually their level of care that they may have not received in comparison to their white counterparts. And you mentioned something about when you first went into social work, but you went into fostering. So what kind of, I would say, what kind of made you come out of the local authority setting? So as a soldier, what did you see that was like, I can't be in a LA setting because of what I've seen?
I find like decision making is either left or right. There's never a middle ground. So I feel like some of the black families that I believe need support, instead of removal, the children will be removed.
Right.
And some of the families that, why do they still have their children? You're supporting them. And then things are happening. And I just don't understand it. And I just feel there is a cultural conflict that is happening and no one is acknowledging it. And I think that's the thing. People, when I talk to officials and some people about fostering, they talk about, what Ofsted said, and they look at, it's about providing a safe home, but safety is not just four walls. It's about safety of mind. It's about exploring different things. And if people are not exploring that properly and actually making decisions based on what information they have right now, and these decisions are becoming a paper exercise rather than let's explore it and let's treat people as individuals, I find it difficult. I remember going into work and being told, new family, I was co-working this case, and this woman, she was from Jamaican heritage. I think she had 5 kids, and they removed all the 5 kids. Yes, their history was very up and down. I think in the past they should have removed the kids, but what they were looking at right now, she just needed some support. So I remember she had a baby, she had teens, she had 5 kids, and I remember all of them they were all split up. I think 2 of them were together, then 2 of her siblings together, then 1 of them was on their own. And I went home and I was like, imagine waking up with 5 of your kids and going to bed with nobody. And then the next day, I remember
the trauma of removal. Yeah.
And then I remember the next day, she came to the offices, and one of the children, she was breastfeeding, and she was like, I need to give my child breast milk. I need some support. And one of the managers must have said she needs to hand express. They wouldn't give her funds to buy a pump to continue for this child to be breastfed. Yeah. She told them, the manager said that the woman needs to hand pump her breast milk. And I just thought to myself, at that time I never had children, but knowing what I know now about breastfeeding, and everyone knows, we're always told, breast is best or what have you. Yeah. Even from a social services point of view, not encouraging that the mum wants to give that child breast milk while this process unfolds. They said she must pump hand express. I just couldn't understand it. I just felt very uncomfortable through the whole process. So I just decided this isn't for me. I know where I am in life. I think as well, because it was my 3rd degree at that time. I said I think maybe if I was a lot younger when I got into social work, I probably would have stayed. But I think where I was, because I knew myself, I sort of knew what I was willing and not willing to accept. I said, I'm not gonna last here. I need to pivot. I need to see what else is out there.
And what was your experience of fostering then?
Fostering, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the reason I would say it was amazing because of the child that I looked after. When I got into fostering, I said to myself, I don't want a young child, I want a teenager.
Yeah.
And my rationale for that was, one, I hadn't had my children at that point. And two, I thought when we look at fostering, we look at children and vulnerability, a lot of teens are missed, and most people want little babies or young people because they feel that, or this is my assumption, but I do speak to people, they feel that a child who is younger has less trauma, and that is not the case.
Yeah, not the case at all, yeah.
It exhibits in different ways. So I was very keen to sort of have a teen. So I went through the process to become a foster carer. I was approved. And then I remember the social worker at the time was this African man, and he was really lovely. And he called me up one day and said, Rachel, I'm moving agencies. So before I got into fostering, I explored, I did research. So I looked at local authorities, I looked at private fostering, because there's two forms you can foster. So at that time, I decided that the local authority wouldn't be able to support me the way an independent IFA would, based on when I was reviewing it. This was many years ago. So I decided to go for an IFA. So fast forward, became a foster carer, was approved, had a great social worker, a black social worker. He was amazing. He didn't do my assessment though, but he just became my
supervising.
He was my supervising social worker. So he called me one day and he said, Rachel, I'm moving to a different agency. And I was like, really? And I was like, well, if you're going, I'm going. So I left and I moved to his agency.
Right.
Didn't have a placement, but moved because of the relationship. And this is why I think, and people need to understand, the relationship a foster carer has with their social worker, supervising social worker, is very important.
Could you talk a bit more about that? Why it's so important?
It's because if you're going to have someone that's coming into your home and supporting you and monitoring you, you need to feel comfortable with them. You need to be able to have difficult conversations with them. You need to be able to embrace them in your home. Your home is your sacred place. So if you have a social worker that you do not like, or they do not like you, it's not going to work. When things get difficult, they are not going to not everyone is professional. They may not push and go the extra mile for you when times get difficult.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that the supervising social worker that you have is good. So you can sit down, you can be honest, you can say what's challenging, what's going great, because it's not an easy road. Fostering is a journey. There's going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really important. So he left. I said, I'm coming with you. So I stayed with him. And then I got offered a few placements, but they didn't materialize. And then one placement was offered. I remember, he won't mind me speaking about his story. I'm not going to say his name, but I'll give you some details. So I remember I got the placement got the referral information. They said, he doesn't stay in, he runs away, he's never at home, he leaves at 7 o'clock in the morning, he gets back at 7 p.m. and he's 13. But I said, I'll take him. Yeah. And then at this point, after I took him, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Like, I think I was in my late 20s when I first started fostering. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? But I was like, okay, I'm committed to it. This is something that I've always wanted to do. Yeah. Because when I was at uni doing my first degree, I worked at a care leavers home. Okay. And from that point, I remember when I was growing up as well, my mum and dad worked in a children's home. Right. So it was something I always wanted to do. I said, when I feel stable in life, I'm going to foster. So I said, even though the referral was scary, I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
You want to make it work.
Yeah, I'm going to make it work. So he came and everything they said, I didn't have that issue. He never ran away once. He was always in the home. He wanted to be around me. We did a lot together. And then one day I asked him, what happened with your last foster carer? And I think this is really important. And this is why I think local authorities and fostering organisations need to understand this as well. Although his last foster carer was black, because she was a lot older, he felt very uncomfortable. So he used to say that when he went to school and she used to go places with him, everyone would be like, oh, is that your grandma, or who's she? Because she was a lot older than him, so she could never be his mum or what have you. Right. So he felt that when they asked questions, he then had to explain his story. He had to disclose all of this. And a lot of the time, he just didn't want to. So when he was with me, people wouldn't ask those questions because they ever thought that I was his mum or his sister. Okay. So he felt more comfortable. So it's complex placing children.
Yeah.
It's not just about, oh, let's have a black foster carer. It's about looking at who we've got there.
The matching.
And this is why it's important for black, I'm going to say this, everyone, black people, don't matter how old you are, black and Asian, minority people, it doesn't matter how old you are, you know, if you have a spare room or if it's in your heart, foster. You know, the demographic at the moment is 50 plus, the people that foster, the majority of people.
Well, foster carers, Rachel, are leaving.
Yes.
Because I did an episode. I did an episode, I remember, with Foster Wiki. So big up to Sarah and Nikki. And they were just saying that the conditions for foster carers right now is absolutely atrocious, to the point that foster carers, people who are in fostering are going.
Yeah.
Was that your experience as well?
Well, do you know what the turning point was? The pandemic. So
Right.
the height of the pandemic, I was working for another organisation where at this organisation, we supported 20,000 foster carers. And one of the areas of contention was the way foster carers were treated. Everyone else was told to isolate.
Right.
Foster carers were told that they would still have to resume everyday activities. So they would still have to take those children to contact. They would still have to do that. And also they were not seen as, I forgot what everyone used to call, what was NHS workers.
They weren't seen as, what is it, key workers, the key worker scheme.
Yeah. They weren't seen as key workers.
Okay.
So a lot of them, if you're looking at the demographic, a lot of them 50 plus, quite an older population, they're still told to go out there in the height of the pandemic, take these children to contact. It doesn't matter if you're vulnerable or whatnot, you need to go and take that to contact, because that is what legislation says, that you're not a key worker, you're not going to be celebrated by what you're doing, you're going to go out there and do that. So you've got to think, then you've got to add to that, these young people are at home just like all the other children, but they're at home, homeschooled. It is a lot for foster carers. It is a lot. So I feel a lot of people were disillusioned by that. Foster caring is not easy. It is a 24-hour job.
It is.
And the reason it's a 24-hour job is because when you go to sleep, in the back of your mind, you're still having to think about that foster child. When you go to toilet, just a simple thing, go into the toilet, you've got to think, are you appropriately dressed? Because, you know, and when I'm not a foster carer now, when I go to the toilet, I don't have to think about, am I appropriately dressed? I'll just go to the toilet. But as a foster carer, you've got to think about all these risks. You're always risk assessing. It's 24 hours. And then if you reflect that in the money that you receive and sort of the treatment or the lack of, you know, you don't get celebrated in the same way, people are like, why am I doing this?
Well, this is the thing, Rachel, because I think with this platform, I mean, there's loads of people, and I'm quite, you know, guys, I'm going to be quite open here. I talk a lot about the system and the issues within the system. But sometimes some of the comments that I see on social media is that obviously we know foster carers get paid per week per child.
Yep.
You know, and I know, which is why I'm always balanced. I know that there's like in social work, good social workers and bad social work as well. And I know that a lot of people go and say that sometimes with foster carers, they're just in it for the money. And I've had foster carers, and it's good having you on here. What would your response be to that? Because I remember when I spoke with Sarah and Nikki, they both were very clear that for them, the motivation is because they want to work with children, look after children. You know, they both spoke about their own experience. But from your end as well, what would you say is your own motivation as to why you came into fostering? And whether that narrative, what people say, is it correct?
Two things I would say. Key thing what you just said, there are good and bad in every sort of profession. There are people out there that are fostering for finances because they don't necessarily want to work as many hours and whatnot, and they are not giving the right care or allocating the right finances to children, which is scary and which is upsetting, but that is the truth. That is the reality of it. And this is why having a good supervising social worker, and this is why social workers are important. So even though I left, doesn't matter, social workers are very important because they are the ones that are going to monitor those families.
That's
so
right.
That is key. So big up social workers.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is key. However, there are people out there that, you know, they want to foster to change lives. Most people that are in foster, there's an emotive story around it. I got into fostering because, one, I knew people that were in foster care, and also, two, because of the love and care that my parents gave me, because I'm a reflective person. So I was reflecting, and a lot of this reflection took place when I was at uni, and I worked in the care leavers home. You know, I felt very fortunate to be in the position that I was in, to be at university in a completely different city. Even though university was hard in terms of managing money and all the rest of it that we go through, I was thriving. I had this opportunity, and there were some young people that were close to my age that didn't have that opportunity, and they were in these care leaver homes. And I just thought to myself, wow, I'm here because of my parents, because of that strong foundation that I had. Not everybody has that. And I said, when I'm in a position where I feel that I can give to a child, I want to do that. I want to try and support somebody so they can have a kickstart. So that was the reason that I wanted to. So it wasn't for selfish reasons. It was purely because I had a home, I had a heart, I had love to give, and I wanted to impart that on a young person. And throughout all the roles I had, I could see how particular systems had failed people. When I worked in the criminal justice system, I saw, when you look at the histories, you look at the different stories, the 7 factors: housing, education, family life. You see these different things. When I worked in sixth form, I saw these things, all these different functions within society. I saw it. I studied sociology, like at secondary school, college, and then at university. It makes you look at society different. So the home is very, very important. And I feel like if we invest and if we work hard, we can have people that can thrive and be supported. And it's not just about your family, it's about the community. And the whole phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, it's really important. And people forget it, but it is really important. And I've got to say, when I was fostering, I utilized my village, which was my family, and I ensured my foster child had a relationship with my family, with my parents, with my aunties, with my grandma, because I knew at that time, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. There was things about life that I would not know. There was experiences that they would be able. So I thought it was very important for him to have his relationship with different people in my family so he could get different things from them. So it doesn't matter if Rachel's always around. You can get something from these people. And I feel like fostering is that it's about the community. It's about people stepping in and to supporting these children, because it's all good and well. We're sitting down, we're talking about knife crime, or we're talking about drugs, or we're talking about mental health and all these things, and blaming, or where are the parents, where is this? Some parents are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have, and they need help. So instead of us pointing fingers to say, oh, they haven't done good enough and this, that, let's step in, let's use the skills that we have. Let's help the children and help families that struggle, because no one teaches you how to be a parent. And just because even if you've had amazing parents, doesn't mean that you will be able to take that on, or it will apply to your children, because your children may need a different parenting style that you had, or what have you.
From your own parents.
It's hard. It's hard. And then add trauma onto that, add just life ups and downs,
the economics,
educational factors, just bias in general. Add that all into the mix, and then we wonder why, society is the way and children are the way they are themselves. Children are raising themselves because families are out there working to pay bills. But then we will hear, oh, well, that she's not done good, or this, that. Do you think she wants to be working out there while her child's at home on the internet or doing what have you? She's trying to pay bills. And if she was staying at home, then you would have people saying she's living off benefits.
It's true. You never know what's going on in people's homes.
Don't know. It's very complex.
One of the things you mentioned, and I want to go back to it, and I think it's very important, you mentioned about the pandemic and how foster carers were treated and not seen as key workers. And there is a lot of inequalities in fostering. What are the inequalities in fostering from your perspective, and what is it you've seen, and what are the challenges you've had, and what are the challenges you've had with local authorities?
Okay, so when I was a foster carer, when I stepped into the room, there was a lot of preconceptions about me in terms of what I was able to bring to this table. Real. So I remember being part of a LAC meeting, and it became very difficult. And I think this was one of the reasons why I was like, you know what, I need to get into social work, because within this meeting, there was a discussion about contact with dad and what have you and all the rest of it. And at this point of time, What I could see was that there wasn't any consistency. Dad was supposed to take the child to an activity. It wasn't happening. The child was left waiting for dad to come. And it just didn't happen. So in that meeting, I said, I don't think we should be pushing for this, because I'm the one that's picking up the pieces and seeing this child upset when they're supposed to be out on this activity and it doesn't happen. When before I was taking him on the activity, it was happening or what have you. I was then accused of colluding with dad because I went against what the IRO said. And I was told to shut my mouth. I was told to stop talking and all the rest of it, because they just did not like what I had to say. And I was like, you're not listening. And if you're going to honor the child's voice and listen and see what is good for him, do you think it's good for him to be disappointed week in, week out, when this is an activity that we were doing before prior, and now you've asked this other person to come involved and it's not working? No one's saying stop contact. What we're saying is, let's make it more achievable. Let's make it so it works for both parties and the fallout doesn't happen.
Yeah. So what was the response when you addressed that? So you said they told you shut up. But how did you deal with it after that LAC meeting?
Boy, it was hard. I remember going into the car park. I wasn't punching the air, but that's what I felt like doing. I was like, who does she think she is? You know, like, I don't care what any of you lot got to say. I am the child expert. And the reason I am the child expert, because I am with this child every single day.
Yeah.
You guys see him when you pop in.
Every 6 weeks or every 3-6 months.
And the worst thing about this case was, in 1 year, we had like 4 different social workers.
Yeah.
And the best social worker that he had was a black male. He was the best, but he was an agency worker. And I'll tell you why he was the best, because he was the only one that said, come, let's go out. Let's leave the house and let me take you somewhere and let's do something on the agreed time where he was supposed to come. He was the only one. All the others wanted to sit in the house, talk to me, and then talk to him. And I was like, you're not, he's the one that's important. You need to know, I shouldn't be sitting down and telling you all of these things. Yes, you need to hear from me, but hear his voice, not my voice, not his voice via me. And he was the best social worker, and he was amazing, but he was an agency social worker, and they didn't see that. They should have seen that he needed a strong black male in his life.
Yeah.
And he could have got that, and I think he would have thrived if he had that more. But it didn't happen.
With what you're saying about representation and black men in social work, or black women in social work as well, when you've spoken to foster carers from our community, have they mentioned that actually that they need more social workers from our background, because they feel a bit more competent, not competent. They feel a lot more comfortable. Is that a strong theme that's coming through?
And that is one of the reasons why the organisation exists. Because with the role that I was in previously, when I worked for an organisation as the operation director, we set up a focus group. And part of this focus group was to understand the voices of foster carers, to sort of shape what we do, but also support them. And there was a black woman on that group. And I remember that, I think as part of this role at one point, I had to do some interviews for BBC and what have you.
Yeah.
She reached out to me and she sent me an email and said, it was so refreshing seeing you representing us on TV as a young black woman. And she said, I really wanted to speak to you about it, but I don't mind being in those groups, but I feel that I can't express myself. My voice isn't heard. Right. And I don't feel comfortable doing that, because I don't want to be seen as the angry black woman or the negative black person. So I don't say anything. I just say 1 and 2 things that I know is pleasing, but I don't give it the real deal.
Yeah.
But I thank you for being here so I can have authentic conversations, and I want to have authentic conversations with you. And that for me was like, how many other people feel like that?
Yeah.
How many other people don't have a space as a carer to express themselves because they don't want to feel that what they're saying isn't valid? Or when you speak about people leaving, another reason why people leaving is because of the conflict, but also because of allegations. And sometimes there's allegations linked to cultural things or misunderstandings.
Can you go in more, Rachel? Because, I'm so glad you raised that, because, and I'm just linking it back to the episode with Sarah and Nikki. Sarah said that, sorry to keep going back to it, but it's important I link the two. And she actually said that how the allegation system is the most misused system.
Yeah, it's not a nice system at all. You know, I'm supporting, or I've been in talks with people that are going through allegations, and it has destroyed them as a family unit, and it's just been the most horrible thing that they've ever experienced. Even when you think about, you know, grievances and things, what have you, in most settings, they're not nice.
Yeah.
But imagine going through a process where you cannot represent yourself, where you have to rely on the social worker, your social worker, to advocate for you in meetings, to speak on your behalf when you're not even in that meeting. So when I spoke to you before about having a good relationship, if you have a good relationship with your social worker, they are going to advocate for you because they know you. They're going to move things for you to make your voice be heard, even though you're not there. Whereas if you don't have a good social worker, what do you think happens?
Well, you're ushered out. No one's got your back.
No one's got your back. And that's it. So then there's an allegation against you. You may hear about what that allegation is, but you're not in the room while they're discussing it. When you're not in the room to give your feedback
and your account
of what's happened at all. So imagine how oppressive of a system that is. And even if, you know, and then even the way the outcomes are set out, it's just never clear. So, and then some agencies, and this happens a lot, will encourage foster carers to just resign, because if you resign, the process kind of stops.
So it's less hassle for them, isn't it?
Less hassle for them as well.
Right.
So imagine if you've been a dedicated foster carer and then you're under that level of scrutiny, but you can't speak for yourself. You don't know what's happening.
So basically, in a way, Rachel, what you're saying to me is that foster carers don't really have a foothold in this kind of... And the thing is, what you're saying to me, I've heard it's a lot. It's not just one foster carer who's actually considered. So many feel they have not got a foothold in the system.
And it's sad because I don't want everything what we're saying is negative, because things like this will put people off, let's be honest.
Yeah, but we have to speak about it.
But we have to speak about it because we have to be real and transparent. And the key thing about fostering is resilience. It's not about having the correct nuclear family and everything's perfect and you know you and your husband and you got 2 kids and life has been perfect for you and you live in a village or what have you. No, it's about the real people, because when the shit hits the fan, you're going to need something more to keep you going. But if you don't have that as an individual, you're going to be like, do you know what, I can't do this anymore. You have to be resilient, because the experiences you may encounter to support this child may be difficult, and you need something about you to be able to overcome that. And it's worth it. The key thing, what I'm going to say, it is worth it, because going back to the child that I was supporting, they said he wouldn't get any GCSEs. They said all these negative things. I was like, no. Let's see this let's see this money, this people premium that you allocate. I need to itemize. How have you been spending it?
Yeah.
How have you been spending
Contextualize it and break it down.
Oh, you haven't been spending it.
Yeah.
Okay, we want that money. He's into this, he's into that. You need to organize that. I need to get him a tutor. He will have tutoring. He will have this. Let's use this the way it needs to be used.
Yeah.
And I ensured that I advocated. So it's key that if you're working with a child, you need to advocate. When there was issues at school, I'd be right there. I'd be advocating for him. I used to always say to him, I don't care what happened at school, good, bad, or indifference. You come and tell me what happened, and I can support you. I can advocate for you. If you don't tell me, I walk into the meetings blind.
Yeah.
I can't support you. I can't help you, because sometimes they will just see you as this young black boy, whereas there's more to the story. So I used to even see trends. So I remember, like, the start of term, he would always get in trouble. And then it would slow down. Like, every day I used to get text message, he did this. And it was just the routine of going back into that structure and the particular lessons that he liked or he didn't like.
And what about schooling and peers?
And school and peers. And trying to find your way. Trying to find your way while you've had
it's so
this
interesting you say
dynamics.
Because I'm just thinking about because I've moved LAs now, but I'm just thinking in my last LA that I've got a young person who was in a foster placement with his sister, and what you're saying actually makes so much sense. But he went to another environment, and what the foster carer was saying is that the environment where he was at before, now he's in this new environment, we're not seeing that. And one of the things that young person was also saying was about representation. The fact that actually, because his foster carer is black as well, but particularly in his school, he was saying that, you know, there wasn't a lot of black children, not a lot of black teachers, not a lot of black men. But then the next setting he went to, a lot more representation. His behavior started to,
yeah, it does. I remember when I went to college, and the college that I went to was predominantly white, and I remember first going there, and the first sort of term when you get your results, I remember AS levels. I don't know, like it's changed now, but yeah, get your first termly like predicted mocks or what have you, and they were atrocious. They like gave me like D's and E's. I was like, how am I gonna go home and show my parents D's and E's?
Yeah,
like,
and you know you're working hard.
Yeah, especially when like GCSEs I did really well, so I was just like, oh God. And then when I did the first exams, I got A's and like full marks in certain exams, and everything changed. The way I was treated, everything changed. When I went to this school, and it was like in a kind of posh, affluent area, loads of the kids had loads of money and what have you. They were like, it was a school where when people turned 16, they got brand new cars. That was the type of school or college it was. They thought that I was this typical black child from an inner city area. So, and they just gave me results based on that.
Yeah.
And when they realised that actually she's a bit smart and actually she works hard,
and she's bright,
they
she's
treated
thriving,
me completely different. So imagine a child that's looked after, that's got from this different environment, how the perception of what people will treat them based on that.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for children. So this is why they need someone that's going to advocate for them. So I'm not saying families that aren't black or minority from minority backgrounds can't advocate. And this is what we're doing as an organisation. My organisation trains families to advocate. We've got different training courses. We've got cultural competency course, which is a foundation course for people to understand, you know, what is culture, what's the difference between bias and preference. You know, let's look at different narratives. If we put you in this situation, what would you do? Because training is only important if you give people the tools to know how to act, not tell someone what to do. Give them a scenario,
a case study.
Give them a case study, you know. So we do that, we do advocating, and we look at safeguarding and attachment, because when we look at attachment as a theory, it's westernized.
Yeah.
But when you look at minority families, their culture, foundation, even if you've been born in England, elements of your upbringing will not be a Western way of life.
Yeah.
So I'll break this down is when we look at attachment, we look at mother and child. When we look at other cultures, so your Caribbean, African, even Eurasian, it could be grandparents.
Community,
Yeah, it's community. So if you're looking purely on the relationship between mom and child, you're going to miss something. You may say there's a negative attachment when actually there's more to the story, because they've got a really good relationship with their grandma, grandparents, or other people
and
within the family.
And
why is that? And that's not explored. So when I said to you earlier, sometimes I feel like some decisions aren't based, some are like too far left or too far right. It's these things that we're not really looking at. And this is why culture and adopting a culture sensitive or care is really important, because if you can understand someone's culture and their identity and their heritage, it will support you to understand that person holistically and look at the intersectionalities of an individual. And I think that's missing. And
the thing is, with what you're saying, you're right, because you've got the lens of a social worker and a foster carer as well. So you've been able to see it from both parts. But you're right, intersectionality is so important. And I think what you were saying, you're correct. There's an overlap of an overlap. And I think it needs to come more into our decision making, not just in terms of being a tick box, in terms of the fact, okay, right, this child should be placed here. What you were saying before about, okay, right, how do we make this foster care resilient? This young person who you said was going missing, but actually wasn't with you. Do you know what I mean? People premium. So these are the things that we need to make sure we consider when making these. And at times I think we don't. We do it, as you said, we're very reactive. We're not proactive and not on the back foot, and that's what needs to change
And
within the
it's
system.
hard because how can you be proactive if you've got a caseload of 40 or 30?
You can't. You're not able to see what you're doing.
You know, how can you know, when I said earlier about that social worker that went out and spent that time and took him out of the house and did things with him?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that if you've got 30 or 40 kids on you? You're not. So even if you've come into the sector with the best will in the world and you want to be the best social worker that you can be, sometimes you are restricted.
Yeah, you are.
And
The
I
red
think
tape, you're limited.
you're limited. So I don't blame social workers. You know, the system has to be reviewed.
Absolutely, I agree.
And it needs to be scrutinised as well, because if we don't scrutinise it, then things won't change. And we need organisations like myself, and they are great organisations doing things and similar things out there. And I don't want to discredit any of what they're doing because it's great. And this is why the magazine, what you mentioned earlier, is important, because it's not just about what I'm doing, it's about what the community is doing. It's the village again.
That's right.
Let's bring all the things that are happening up and down the country and put it in one place for people to understand what is happening, how to access this person, what things and initiatives are going on. Let's hear about experience of people that are looked after. Let's hear about social workers. You know, let's hear about it and let's be moved by the stories to try and get involved. And that's what's really key.
I agree. I've got one final question I do want to ask you. What is your hope? No, actually, it's two. So one, about your organization. Where do you see your organization next 5 years? And two, what do you want to see change in fostering? Or if you could reshape fostering, what would it look like? Those are my two questions. Big questions, but yeah.
Magic one time.
Yeah.
Fostering needs to be more intentional. So social workers need more space. They need more space to be able to be intentional. So caseloads need to be much lower. That's really important. When we are allocating social workers to foster carers, there needs to be more intentional with their, all about personalities, culture, heritage. I'm not saying if you're a black carer, you need a black foster carer, black social worker, you need a black. Not saying that, but the person that is working with them needs to have an understanding of culture. They need to be open. They need to be able to be flexible and adapt and learn. It's a two-way street. We're all learning from each other. That's really important. Also, when we look at fostering, it's great. However, let's look at how we can raise this group of people. Let's celebrate these group of people because they are doing an amazing work. It is hard work. And let's thank them for doing that, because I think if we celebrate them more people will come and more people will listen. And then there's less all these horror stories of all these negative things. When we look at the system of fostering as well, I'm glad that you said earlier that you've moved into looked after, leaving care.
Yeah, leaving care.
Because leaving care is so important. We haven't really touched on it in this appointment, but I felt that my child, because I had him until he had staying and put afterwards, so he didn't leave at 18, he stayed with me. But I think 18 plus, that is crucial.
Very much so,
That is, if you do not get that right, that is where the problems start, because you've had this safety net, you've had this home, you've had this four walls, you've had this person advocating for you, but now you're an adult. Now you can do what you want. Now you are not expected to do certain things. The level of support is less. When you're at 18, I feel like you need more guidance because life gets really tough. The expectations of you are more. You are an
young
adult. You're an adult now. And then if you really think, the day before you was a child, but now you're an adult. But then you may not have a foster care anymore because that may have broken down, or you may be 16 to 18 home, or you may be just leaving home. You don't have that safety net as maybe some people to have your parents to fall back on, or that village. So you need more guidance to navigate the world. So I do think more needs to be looked at that. So I'm glad that you're now in that field, because now you can change that, and you can be really instrumental in that. Generally, we need more carers, full stop, black, white, Asian. We need more carers because the population's aging. Also, with just the whole credit crunch, just the finances in the UK, most people do not have a spare room now because their kids are staying at home. So that will affect foster caring, because before most people do that because they have a spare room. But if your children cannot leave because everything is so expensive and they can't get on the property ladder or rent's too high, that room's not going to come available, and therefore those children will not have a home, and then we get more institutional care.
That's right.
And let's not even start about institutional care. So So we need more people stepping up, different walks of life, different ages. Does not matter if you're 25. If you have a home, you're willing, you're dedicated, and you've got a level of resilience, do it.
Okay. So, Rachel, before we close, if you look in the camera, where can we find you?
Okay, so we have a website. It's www.blackfostercarersalliance.co.uk. We are on socials, Black Foster Carers. Yep, Black Foster Carers Alliance.
Excellent. Okay, people. Rachel, it's been amazing. I know
Thank
you've got to
you.
rush off. Happy Mother's Day as well.
Thank you.
Do you know what I mean? But thank you so much.
No, thank you.
You are going to come back on because actually we are going to be doing a foster carers panel.
Nice.
So I would like to definitely have you back on. But people, you know where to find me. And Rob, you like, subscribe and share to The Social Worker and the Mentor. And if you want to come on and be a guest, socialworkerandmentor@gmail.com. See you soon. Thank you, Rachel.
Bye. Thank you.